Away we go.
Continue. Okay, great. Do you want me to start? Just talk a little bit about. All right. So
sure.
First, let me say it's nice to be in this format for a community meeting, and it's been a very, very busy time. This is actually my first Zoom community meeting, and it's nice to see some good attendance. And thank you for inviting me. And I'm really, in particular, looking forward to the Q&A part, because I think that there's a lot of things that we can cover, and I could speak to why the city is doing different things. The last year, I would say 7 months, have been really challenging for the city. Obviously, we had the mass shooting in December, which seems like an eternity ago. And, since then we've gone through COVID, and now we're having a conversation and some action about equity and police brutality and injustices that exist in a lot of communities. And certainly Jersey City is not immune to any of that stuff. I actually just came from a rally in Berry Lane Park on that. It was well attended and peaceful, like the rest of the protests have been in Jersey City. But, the next couple weeks is going to be meaningful from the standpoint of what type of changes and policies that we implement on a local level, which we could speak to. When I think about kind of our performance over the last couple of months, I'm really proud of the way that the city has worked. We've learned a lot about our workforce and learned a lot about our community. There was certainly no playbook for anything that we've been going through, but the city, Jersey City, was at the forefront of a lot of policies nationally, whether it was testing, whether it was expanding testing, whether it was when we closed down and implemented curfews, whether it was antibody testing, how we're working with our business communities to reopen, how we're funding, whether it be arts or small businesses, or setting aside money for the more vulnerable in our community. I really feel like we've punched above our weight in many ways. So I'm proud of the way the city's worked on that front, and we're certainly not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. The next couple of weeks, we're working on changes to the pedestrian plaza. We're still moving forward in a lot of infrastructure plans that we had, and most of my time is right now spent around the municipal budget and making sure that we're going to try and get through this with as minimal hardship for residents as possible. So that's kind of the 10,000-foot view on kind of what's been happening. I'm happy to take the conversation anywhere that you want it to go, and open it up from here, I guess.
Okay, cool. Why don't we do this? I'm going to, Steve, give you the questions that had been emailed to us prior to tonight.
Okay.
And some of which are going to be answered in this call. So the very first question was about the pedestrian plaza.
Yep.
And so tonight I'm going to be showing everyone the draft design.
Yeah.
Which is great, looked cool. There's a fly through, but this question was specific to the logistics of it, and whether or not the construction was going to begin, or had that been stalled. So perhaps showing the progress that's been made on the design will answer that question. But that was the first question that came up, and then the others are a little, let's call them, they're heavier, right? So one is, how many of the 8 can't wait policies are we intending to put in place?
Yeah.
Currently we have 3. And the last one is sort of covered in the updates that I'm going to be giving, which come from the governor, but when will the Newport Mall open for retail and restaurants?
Okay.
People are dying to shop, man.
Okay, so let me, you want me to just talk a little bit about the pedestrian plaza for a second?
Sure.
All right, so we've been working closely with the historic downtown SID, the business owners there, and the communities directly adjacent, to try and figure out the best way to keep those restaurants and businesses viable. They're all struggling. They're all on the brink of closing. And I think that most on this call would agree with me that nobody wants to live in a city without culture, arts, restaurants, nightlife. Those are all things that are really, really important. What we've done is that we put in a proposal to expand the pedestrian plaza. It's already been changed somewhat from the original plan that we put forward. So we originally had it going to Grand, and now it's only going to go to Montgomery. But we originally were closing 2 lanes. We're only doing 1 lane right now. And we've been working with the community in order to kind of get more and more feedback on what works for them. We started today putting down our trademark green paint where appropriate, the tennis green
saw that.
paint, to make it look similar to the rest of the pedestrian plaza. And we ordered planters, which should be coming in the next 2 weeks. So it'll look less like a construction site and beautify it a little bit. And then the SID is going to be putting down tables for more outdoor seating. And then the restaurants are going to be putting more tables for outdoor seating. So I suspect that in the next 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, it's going to look very, very different from what it does today and be a big help to the restaurants. That said, we're going to continue to tweak it and change it and kind of see what works. And then at the end of this experiment, which is probably closer to Labor Day, we'll see what people downtown and throughout Jersey City feel about it, and we'll keep the parts of it that people feel worked, and we'll eliminate the parts that people didn't like. The specific, some people on this call also have asked about 4th Street in particular, and the possibility of closing that down. You know, when we looked at the traffic patterns there and the construction there, it was hard to kind of close down in absolute and kind of figuring out how to make that work. We're not at a place today because we still have limited resources at City Hall and with our workforce of being able to open and close things around certain hours. So we tried to kind of, close the streets that were easier for us to accommodate in absolute terms right out of the gate, and we'll see where it works going forward. So that's kind of the pedestrian plaza, big picture. I'm sure we'll have more questions on that, but directionally, that's where we're going. And I think it's going to look great, and I think that people are going to really like it. We've had limited amount of pushback, and there's similar comments to when we close the first portion and when we close the second portion. And people adjust, and eventually more open space, they tend to appreciate it, at least is what I found. And hopefully some of these changes will end up being permanent.
Cool. That's really excellent. So we discussed as a board, as we always do before our meetings, and one question did come up, Steve, which was relative to this the outdoor seating. Is the current plan for it to operate on the same hours that restaurants will open?
Yeah.
I think the concern there was, are people going to be allowed to sit outside and dine until 2 a.m.?
No, our plan today was not to do that. It was going to be around some limited hours. I don't think we really kind of thought through the hours, but my vote would be limited hours. We've been trying to find the balance. We certainly recognize that there are people on the pedestrian plaza that are drinking drinks that they purchased at some of those bars today. I walked it last week. We've been trying to find the balance of being mindful that those businesses are able to do some sort of business today after struggling for some time, and at the same time not creating kind of like a Bourbon Street atmosphere. So we've assigned more walking posts to Newark Avenue. We're going to continue to do that. And up till now, if somebody purchases a drink at, let's say, the Ashford, so to speak, and they're outside with it and they were drinking it, we would not been heavy-handed on them. If somebody brought a 12-pack, we saw that as well, to Newark Avenue themselves, we said something to them. We would say, hey, that's not really appropriate. But we've been trying to use kind of a gentle touch on it, and we're going to continue to monitor it. We just don't want it to spin out of control, but we want it to be helpful for people.
Oh, that makes sense.
And the restaurant hours, to get back to your initial question, the restaurant hours are going to be exactly the same type of way that we look at it. We're going to try and find a balance to allow the restaurants to make some money. Hopefully, most of them stay in business through this. That's our objective. And at the same time, if it gets out of hand, we're going to be there to push down on it pretty aggressively.
Understood. Makes sense. We have a question about, and Joe, I'll kick it to you because I know there's a few others you've been fielding, and my family's playing a game, so that could be distracting.
Yeah. So there's a couple questions. I'll read them out real quick here. Mayor Fulop, if you want to respond. One is regarding pedestrian plaza feedback as you go through the process. What will the process be for the public to be able to input their feedback as you're going through the process of learning step by step and kind of iterating through the process?
I mean, it hasn't been formal up till now, and I'd be lying if I said to you that we could have some easy formal process. What we've been doing is taking a lot of feedback from people when they volunteer to reach out to myself or the councilman, and then we pass it on to our traffic planners. And then they take a look at it with data, and then we respond back saying what we can accommodate and what we can't accommodate. And so up to now, I probably had 15 or 20 emails on it, and people on this call once it gets in place, probably 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, when you see the planters and the tables are actually outdoor and there is outdoor seating, it's probably worth a conversation with the board here about what types of things we can tweak, and we'll adjust it as you guys feel fit. I mean, ultimately, we want it to be right for the people that live closest to it.
Okay, who would be the best to contact to funnel all those inquiries at
Yeah.
this point?
So if you email me, I will connect you to Brian Platt and Barca, who's our lead planner on traffic, and she's also planning out the pedestrian plaza, and she would be the best person ultimately. So if you don't have her contact info, I'll loop her in. You can take it from there.
Excellent. Yeah.
Very
The second
nice
question
background.
was, the second question was related to food trucks in and around the pedestrian plaza. Will they be allowed to go inside the plaza, around the plaza? What will the process be for them?
I think up till now, well, we've been trying to get to a place in the food trucks where there are designated spots and they pay for the spots. We've had a couple iterations of that ordinance. It'll probably be moving forward in the next month and a half. That's a broader conversation, which we haven't got into on the food trucks directly adjacent to the pedestrian plaza. My vote would be no. And the reason being is the whole reason that we're doing this is trying and allow those businesses that have been struggling and closed to survive. And they've been paying taxes and they've been paying rent, and we want to give them every advantage possible in order to make it work for them. If you feel otherwise, I mean, again, we're open to feedback. We have such limited resources right now in City Hall that some of these things we haven't had a chance to really think through in detail. The governor says we're opening in a week, and then we try and scramble and figure out how to make something work that's beneficial for our community.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. And then the last question for now on the pedestrian plaza was just with the, it was kind of a little bit of a larger scope than that, was around the temporary areas that have closed in and around that area, along Grove Street, First Street. Some parts of those streets are starting to be closed down. How will that affect parking and traffic around those areas?
I think that the parking on Grove Street, because we took away one lane and we moved the parking over, so it had a limited impact on parking. It might have an impact on through traffic, but we're going to be monitoring that. And then on the other side, so the north side of Grove, we're probably going to have some impact on Morgan and Bay is what we're expecting, just because of the way that those streets work from a traffic flow standpoint. We're monitoring that as well. But most of this conversation has happened with the SID there. So they've been fully in the loop on what we're doing. And most of those restaurants view it as a fair trade-off. You take away 2 parking spots, but you get more opportunity for customers, which is a win for them. I think, at least most of them think so.
Okay, and then a final question just popped in about the taxi stand right along Grove Street. Is this going to impact that at all?
The taxi stand right along Grove Street, no.
Yeah.
It's not going to have an impact.
Because that's still the active lane, right? That's
exactly.
Yeah, that's the eastbound lane. That's still active.
Exactly.
Got it. Oh, that makes perfect sense. If I might, since we're going to talk about the pedestrian plaza later, can we shift a little bit to the police force and some of the things that you've been doing lately?
Yeah. So, I often talk about the fact that we live in a very, very diverse city, and we are not immune, though, to some of the challenges that you're seeing across the country. And my goal is for us to be a model of what a police department can be, and what it should be. So when President Obama challenged mayors to take a pledge about revisiting use of force guidelines, I was amongst the first in the country to do that. And the next morning, we started working on what we can change. I know that there is the 8 Can't Wait campaign, and outlines what cities have in place and don't have in place. I think it's a little bit inaccurate for Jersey City, because most of those things have not only been in place recently, been in place for a very, very long time here. And where there was a possibility to tweak and strengthen them, we immediately did that on Wednesday. Some of the things are just not permitted by state law. For example, a ban on chokeholds. A ban on chokeholds is indicated by the Attorney General guidelines, which is something that governs the way that we act, where every police department acts as with regards to the use of force in the state of New Jersey. And it's very clearly outlined. We changed it to make it clear as a last resort use and not something that's trained. We clearly outlined how it would be defined for us, and the state adjusted their use of force guidelines on chokeholds yesterday after we did, replicating what we did. So that was a nice thing overall. But there's a lot of things like shooting at a moving vehicle. While it didn't have I don't think it had us in the It Can't Wait campaign as having that as a restriction. It absolutely is something that's not allowed in the Jersey Police Department. And I would say that my track record on that is exceptionally strong. I mean, I've terminated 3 police officers in the last several years for that exact infraction. I would probably say that there's not another mayor in the country that has fired officers for firing at a moving vehicle like that. So we have a strong track record. Our goal is to have all 8 of them as strong as possible within the Attorney General guidelines. And there's a committee put together by the council president that's going to continue to review that. And our goal is to implement whatever that they recommend is legal to implement. We want people to trust the police department, and we want them to feel comfortable. The other conversation has been around a civilian review board. We are absolutely in support of a civilian review board, but again, under New Jersey Attorney General guidelines, it is not something that's permitted. It is going through the courts right now with Newark. Newark created a civilian review board. The union sued. The court found, I think, first with the union, then the appeals court with Newark, and now it's at the state Supreme Court. Once we have a verdict on that, we'll implement whatever we are allowed to in the strongest way possible. So I feel like we are doing what we can legally, and we're going to continue to do that. But we're open to suggestions and feedback. I mean, by no means do we have a perfect department, but we're going to continue in that direction.
That's great. Thank you. That's exactly what I was hoping you would talk about. All right. If we could shift gears a little bit, we have a question that just popped up, which we as the VNA have questions about because of its ultimate plans to land in Mary Benson Park. But any updates on the negotiations and or settlement in regards to the embankment?
We were very, very close. Maybe the week before the COVID pandemic started. Like, when I say very close, I mean, we were going back and forth with final documents. The one holdup right now is around union labor. And it's a breakdown which could have potentially derailed the entire agreement, so the developer says. And my belief is that they'll eventually continue the conversation, although nothing has happened, obviously, in the last 2-3 months. I do feel it is important that the construction is done with local and union labor, because they've made a commitment over the years to be hiring local residents and minority residents into the union halls. We've had a partnership on that, and it's the city's responsibility to make sure that they are working. It's their responsibility to make sure that they're trained. And so when you have an opportunity like this where they're getting a massive zoning change, you're talking about a significant number of units, I felt that it was something that we could obligate in a reasonable way. And so that's where the breakdown is right now. And I'm pretty adamant about that. So I would prefer not to have a settlement than to have a settlement that I didn't feel comfortable with. And hopefully conversations will resume in the next month to 2 months. I'm fairly comfortable they will. And we are very, very close, though. This union conversation is kind of the last hurdle that we need to get over. They said they would do it if they get a tax abatement, and we said that we're not doing those tax abatements anymore. You know, it's very unclear what the Hymans, or Vicky Hyman, who's the surviving spouse to Steve Hyman, it's very unclear what she gets paid through this. We've heard 50 million, 60 million by the Albanese group who's acquiring it. And my view is that the person who should take the haircut or subsidize is really Vicky. The city doesn't need to step in there and give a tax abatement. If they can't make the economics work with all the requirements that the city's putting forward, then they're just paying too much to the land from Vicky ultimately. And so they need to adjust the price in order to make it work. And that's kind of where we are right now in negotiations.
Okay, thanks.
Eric, if you don't mind me jumping right back in.
Nope.
Mayor Fulop, if we could just step back one quick moment to the police question.
Yeah.
There was an additional question that we didn't get to, and if you could quickly speak on the militarization of police and where you feel the status of our police department is in the city right now, and if the level of security is appropriate.
Is this is kind of like a defunding the police question kind of thing?
In essence, like asking, like, do you think our police force is appropriate for what we need for our city?
Well, I mean, if you look at per capita and the number of police officers, when we came into office, we were at 769 officers, which was very, very below, very, very, I would say inadequate relative to the size of the city. And you look at other cities, we've grown that gradually to about 950 officers. It's where we are today. We are still below where we should be per capita by definition. And we've diversified the police department. When I took office, the police department was majority white. Now it is majority minority, and most of the residents, most of the police officers live in Jersey City. I want to speak a little bit to the questions about funding for the police department. Most of the funding is salaries. Out of the $100 million, give or take, that we put into the police department per year, the majority of that is around salaries. And when people speak about defunding the police department or reducing that budget, ultimately, the only way to do that is reducing salaries, which is reducing headcount. It's also important for people to recognize by New Jersey law, the way that gets reduced is not the longtime police officers that are asked to leave. It's the last ones in or the first ones out. That's the way the process works. Those are all your officers that live in Jersey City. Those are the ones we've recruited. That's the diversity that represents the department. And for the most part, our police department do a phenomenal job. They do more than just public safety in the sense of policing, so to speak. They were the cornerstone of the testing centers during the pandemic. They are out there day in and day out doing mentoring and coaching. So I know that the conversation exists around the country with regards to defunding and what police officers are doing. I don't feel like that's a fair conversation for our police department necessarily, because for the most part, they've been outstanding. And that's not to say that we can't make some improvements. I'm not saying that by any stretch, but I do feel that, where the budget is today and what we've allocated going into this year's budget, which we're going through right now, is at a good level to keep people safe. And we would like to keep it there.
That's great. Thank you. I will say we have a comment here about appreciation for the diversity of the police department. And I personally echo that as well.
Yeah,
I think it reflects our city, and I think it's a really wonderful thing.
If you reduce the headcount, ultimately the people that are going to be let go are the newer officers. That's just the way it works. And that 70% of the officers that we've hired are minority officers. And for the most part, those officers live in Jersey City and they're very involved in the community. Think about something like BLESC, which is Black law enforcement serving the community. Those are all officers that live here, and those are younger officers, and they're involved in every aspect of city life in a positive way, mind you. So, we haven't been perfect, but for the most part, I think our police department does a really, really good job. On the militarization, I mean, I can't say that from my standpoint that I've been involved in buying military weapons and buying armored vehicles and really pushing that by any stretch. I mean, if we've taken any via grants from the federal government, I'm not really even aware of it. It didn't come across my desk. The only thing that I do know that I was very involved in with upgrading weapons was when we upgraded our ESU, which was very, very important, emergency services unit, which was very important for incidents like December 10th, when you have a mass shooting. They're the ones that respond to those sort of incidents. And they had just had antiquated weapons at that point. So I did invest in that. But I think that a city of our size should have a top caliber ESU unit in order to keep residents safe in that situation. And I'm thankful actually that we invested in that training and that technology. So that's the only time that we've. And one other thing on this, if you look at our budget, although police is the largest, public safety is the largest part of our budget, if you look at it relative to the percentage of employees that we have, it's disproportionately lower. And if you look at what we've increased over the last 6 years, we've made more investments in recreation, in health and human services, in our library, in HEDC, than you've seen the growth in the police budget from a percentage standpoint. So, you know, I do think we have our priorities right. Crime is decreasing in the city every year, and specifically the last 3 years. So I feel like we're moving in a good direction, and I'd be reluctant to really change the formula on what we're investing into that. I think we could change some of the processes, but I don't think the conversation around defunding it is certainly beneficial for us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
are there still meetings with the police department available during this time? And how can members of the community directly meet with members of the police department to get updates more specific on this?
Like we were doing the captain's meetings prior to the pandemic. I'll speak to the public safety director and the chief. Maybe we could start those Zoom captain's meetings. We haven't been doing them, to be honest with you. I mean, during the pandemic, people don't realize like at one point we were down 40% of our officers. They were out.
Right.
So, you know, they've been struggling from a personnel standpoint and some of the processes as well. And we're just getting our feet underneath us.
Well, thank you. I should make you aware there's a comment in here, Steve, that's a compliment to how the police department has responded to the protest and the de-escalating tone that they've taken. I think that's huge, and so I just wanted you to hear that.
I just want to say also, you know, like one of those can't wait is de-escalation. We have real strict policies around requiring de-escalation. So, and around the protests, our police leadership and the administration, we made a very deliberate decision that we were not going to put riot gear out in front and treat residents that I ultimately work for as enemies. So we tried our best to work with the organizers, and it's been a good strategy that the police department's made, and it's yielded benefits to us in building bridges ultimately. So I feel pretty good about that. And thank you, whoever made that comment.
And yeah, and thank you for that. Where can the public go if they want to see more details on the finances that you were discussing in regards to police and the other improvements that have been in areas like health and human services and parks and whatnot?
Our proposed budget online. If somebody, if you guys want to send me an email with aggregating the notes to this, I'll send you back whatever we have, and then you can just distribute it to everybody who's here.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. One last question.
Yeah.
Steve, and then we're going to go into the rest of the meeting. And it is relative to your reaction of the school budget that was passed.
So look, there's no question that the city needs to be investing more money in our schools. And there's no question that there's waste at the Board of Education, and that they could make some relatively easy changes that would yield huge benefits in the classroom that that I don't think they're making. I think the narrative is grossly unfair with regards to that the city owes some money that they haven't been paying to the Board of Education. And why do I say that? I mean, you just think about the last 3 years, for example. I mean, the city has picked up, meaning the administration has picked up from the Board of Ed, all the fees around crossing guards, all the fees around garbage collection. We're doing the lead remediation in the school for $14 million. We are building them new schools. We have 2 of them under construction that we're working on right now, $20 million each. So my perspective has been I'm unwilling to write a blank check to a Board of Education that hasn't shown a willingness to be financially responsible. However, if they can outline real needs and programs, we are willing to invest that money. Earlier in the year, Councilman Yun, who passed away during the COVID pandemic, and I outlined a plan that would allow the city to put in more money, increasing the tax base, but at the same time, do basic common sense changes that would also yield huge benefits. What's an example? Think about the old number 3 school. That's on Bright Street. It's a big school. It has 70 students in it, 50 students in it. And it is entirely underutilized on very, very high valued property, real estate values. And what I've said repeatedly to the superintendent and board is that, you know, we have a shortage of space downtown. So either you should sell that building and monetize it if you're not going to use it, or you should fill it with students. But to have 50 students in there is entirely unacceptable. You know, the city over the last 6 months has done buyouts for a lot of our longtime employees. We don't need approvals from the state. It saves us a lot of money. We pay them a fraction of their salary in a lump sum. They leave. We pay them their accrued vacation days, and then we don't refill it with a hiring position, or we fill it at a position that we hire at a drastically reduced salary because they're a new entry person. We've spoken to the Board of Ed repeatedly that you can do buyouts of long-term teachers there. It's not painful for anybody because it's volunteer buyouts. They're choosing to take it because of the incentive from the money standpoint. And at the same time, if you have a teacher leave who's been there with a $100,000, $110,000 salary, you could either replace them with a starting teacher at a much lesser salary, or you could put 2 salaries in there for that one trade-off. There are easy things that they can do from a budget standpoint that they are just reluctant to do. And then they have 187 positions or something in unfilled positions. And then they've added about 300 additional positions in this budget. And, you know, again, I don't think they're realistic about where their budget is situated, which makes it very frustrating for me because ultimately that's going to trigger a tax increase for residents. So that was a long answer, but
no, it was a good one. Thank you. I appreciate that. It was a thoughtful response. I mean, I get it. We had one more, but I'm going to go ahead and just talk about it briefly because this came up. This came up recently in the village where a developer reached out and said they had a retail space and they had a potential a prospective tenant, which was an existing medical marijuana dispensary that has a license, has a dispensary, and the way the legislation is, they're allowed to have one satellite, and they were looking at doing their one satellite in that location. And I'll just say what we discovered as the VNA doing our due diligence is that the way the restrictions are currently laid out, there's only a couple of spots in all of downtown Jersey City where that might even happen. One, ironically, is the Starbucks at the end of the Grove Street Plaza. But the 500 and 1,000 foot bubbles are pretty extensive. And when I spoke to Tanya at planning about it, and Councilman Solomon as well, they sort of felt like the restrictions were pretty heavy currently, and that it may not be permitted kind of anywhere in Jersey City. So I just wondered if you could just give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, if you in the follow-up email put this in there, I'll send you the map from engineering. Virtually the entire city is,
I have it. Yeah, exactly.
The one area that I do remember is close to the Holland Tunnel. There's a couple slivers there that if you are lucky to be in, you know, a corner of the right block, you could find yourself in a position that you could open a dispensary. I'm a supporter of legalization. My position up till now has been that I'm going to defer to the council people with regards to what goes into their specific wards, because the different communities have a very, very different perspective on how they want to approach legalization. And a lot of the council people have had different perspectives as well. They do need a letter of support from this local city government, and we've been fairly reluctant to give that without some community input. So I haven't gotten any requests of this for 4 months for obvious reasons. So I'm a little bit out of the loop on it, but I don't think any are imminent coming in right now.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, listen, I want to be respectful of your time. And first, let me say, Steve, thank you so much for being on. If you have time, I know you have familial obligations, but by all means, please stay on. I was totally remiss when we started. I wanted to offer my condolences on your grandmother. I'm sorry to hear that. Sounds like she lived a full, fabulous life.
I appreciate that.
So I'm going to go ahead and continue with the agenda. Again, Steve, you're welcome to stay on, and I just want to express my thanks for your joining us tonight.
Thank you. And I just want to say really thank you to, you know, I'm not going to say specifically the VNA, but, you know, a lot of the residents that I see on this call and a lot of the activists over the last 4 months have really kind of shown like a lot of the things that make Jersey City special. I mean, I can't tell you how many people just scrolling through the attendees here have asked about volunteering opportunities, where they can donate, have offered advice, have been critical where appropriate. And I think that really kind of makes a city a special place when you have this great spirit of volunteerism. And, you know, the last couple of months have really shown, you know, the true character of the city. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of you on here, because, you know, it really, I say it all the time, it's really the privilege of a lifetime to be the mayor, and certainly of a city like this during these times, and to work with many of you. So while you have me on, I just wanted to take the opportunity and say thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Fulop. Really appreciate that.
All right, I'm going to just close my video here.
Yep, all good.
Out, right?
All good.
Eating pizza and drinking, all right?
Sounds great. Thanks so much. All right, everyone, I'm going to share screen and we're going to jump into the rest of the agenda. Chuck, I will be quick as promised for items 2 through 6 so we can get to your development presentation, but we want to make some pretty important reminders to everyone about things that are important to the city. The first, of course, being the Census 2020. We're going to do the COVID-19 updates, virtual meetings that the city's having, an update on the Village Park. I'm going to show you the draft design of the pedestrian plaza, and then we'll jump into the presentation for 377 4th. So Census, as you know, and apologies that I'm not full screen here, but I can't see the Zoom stuff if I go full screen. So Census 2020, this is obviously just us wanting to remind everyone, please, please, please fill out your census, talk to your neighbors, find out if they filled out the census. It's pretty straightforward. You can do it online. You can literally do it by phone. They're open till 2 a.m. You can do it by mail. This is very important. And by law, none of the information that is provided on the census can be disseminated in any way. So there's no danger of immigration status or anything like this. This is just really important for infrastructure, for healthcare, and for schools, for funding, because every response equates to dollars for the city. COVID-19 updates, let's just jump right in. So citywide news and resources. Schools are closed, wah, wah. The items that have changed since last month are in blue. So the testing that the city is now, has available, the free testing on Marin and 8th Street, there's now no appointment required, and they have split the diagnostic and antibody tests into these 2 times that you see here. Mondays and Wednesdays, 8 to 11:30 a.m. for diagnostic, and Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. for antibody. Continued positive signs of progress. I wanted to pull this up. This is that fantastic data set that exists in Tableau, but you can just see here on my screen the curve, where we stood back in March, and the spikes in April, and where we stand as of the 4th of June. The cases are dropping significantly. We flattened the curve, so we should all feel very good about what we've been doing. And as I heard the governor say, social distancing is working, face coverings are working. We need to suck it up a little bit longer with this new reality until we
open the wine for me
safely. Yes, please. I'll have a glass.
Thanks. That was my mistake.
Yeah, it's all good. Till we can safely reopen. And then the parking regulations, we know, are back in effect, and these are the off-street parking within the village that Councilperson Solomon has helped secure. Farmers markets are reopened. I've personally done the online and the in-person. I recommend the online for Stony Hill and Ort Farms, but all of the others, let's call it smaller vendors, the pickle guy and the JC Fish, it's perfectly manageable to go down and shop at the farmers market in a responsible way. Park openings, we've added 2 more parks in Jersey City. They're here in blue. Hamilton Park and Van Voorst Park have joined the group of parks that have reopened. So now this background photo, which is the same one I had up last month, actually makes sense. And then reopening updates. So just in case you're not aware, the mayor's office has started a reopening program, that they've announced a reopening program. And what's interesting about that is businesses just need to apply, right? So restaurants that want to have outdoor dining, they fill out a form, and they can apply to be part of the outdoor dining program. Same with non-essential retail businesses. There's a form for them to fill out. Those are all slated to reopen on the 15th of June. The rest of these are per the state, per Governor Murphy's updates. Hair salons and barbershops, you can all get your hair cut Monday, June 22nd. Youth summer programs are slated
Eric,
to open.
could I just chime in on that for a second?
Yep, please do.
So on the relief funds, there should be stuff posted on the EDC, Jersey City's EDC, Economic Development Corporation website later this week. There's going to be a program via the county that is going to be for small businesses. It's going to be administered by the EDC. It's going to be a substantial amount of money. It's going to target businesses that have 25 or less employees, and grants up to $20,000. And it's going to be structured very similarly to the PPP, which means the majority of that, 75% of it, has to go towards salaries. The city also has a local relief fund that we are using towards a portion of it towards supporting the arts, and some of that's going to be direct grants towards arts organizations working through the Jersey City Arts Councils, artists, direct grants towards nonprofits, specifically focused on, with a bend towards ones that are focused with summer youth-oriented programming. So that's on that front. And then we have a tranche of dollars on the relief fund that's going to be earmarked towards what we would deem the most vulnerable in our community. And that's going to be rent relief, and that's also going to be towards the immigrant community that lives in Jersey City. And that's going to be posted in the next week and a half as well. So we've been doing a lot of work around the grant programs and how we could help with a local relief fund. And we've raised a sizable amount of money, and it should be rolled out this week. And please make sure that businesses and people are aware of it who may need it.
Outstanding. Yes, thank you. We'll get that on our website. That's really great. Final piece on here is about the village restaurants. So last month we showed you what we had done. We did the legwork and contacted every restaurant or food provider in the village, and on our website created a very easy to find link. It's literally when you go to our website, jcvillage.org, it's the first thing there. You go to read more and you see that there's a map which shows all the businesses and all the businesses. And here's what's important here, right? We talked about trying not to use third-party delivery services, especially people like Uber Eats that are charging Jersey City specifically additional surcharges. And every restaurant on this list, it is noted what their preferred method of ordering is. And almost 100% of these prefer for you to call them direct, and those that manage their own online delivery services are happy for you to use them because they manage those themselves.
To add on to that, if anyone has any information to update this page, email info@jcvillage.org. And please let us know.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. Yep. So next, virtual meeting updates. Again, we went through a little sort of, test run of the city's website last month. These are all right there on the city's website for you to find. You look for the virtual meetings. These are the virtual meetings that are happening this month. The caucus meetings are the ones where the public is invited but not allowed to speak, where they set the agenda for the council meetings. So there are 2 caucus meetings this month and 2 council meetings this month. The planning board is meeting on the 9th and the 23rd. Historic preservation is meeting on the 15th, and the zoning board of adjustment is meeting on June 11th. Those, again, as we had showed previously, are found very simply by going into the city's website, which is jerseycitynj.gov or JCNJ. And you can link to this calendar, which shows all the virtual meetings that the city is holding. Village Park update. This is really just this is a feel-good portion of this evening. You guys have been awesome. People have responded to last month, offered to volunteer. I am kicking myself for not having taken before pictures, because this looked like, to use my friend's analogy, it looked like a field in Nebraska. And some of the plant species that were originally part of the park were dying, literally because of these invasive species of creeper weeds that were climbing up and suffocating them. So Shout out here at the bottom of this slide for all those that have volunteered thus far. If you are interested in volunteering, just send us an email to the info@jcvillage.org calendar or email, excuse me, and I will share the shared calendar we've created for volunteering with you. And then when it's your time to volunteer, I happen to be lucky enough to live next door. So I come out, I mask up, I come out, I let you in, tell you what needs to be done. You choose what you want to do, stay as little or as long as you like within that 3-hour shift. But this is what the park looks like today. And it is a marked improvement from where we were. The mountains are cleared. Those that have suffered, death of the native species, that will be part of phase 2. Phase 1 right now is just getting all the weeds and nasty stuff out. And phase 2 will be doing some replanting and resoiling, but it looks truly beautiful. And I thank you all for your help.
Eric, do we know when potentially Village Park will reopen?
We do not. Full transparency, we asked Mayor Fulop to put us at the bottom of the list because of our size. We're a pocket park, and we felt it would be very difficult to socially distance within this space. But we have an open dialogue with the city. It's going to be up to the city. I don't know, Steve, if you're still on, I'm guessing maybe it's a couple of weeks away.
Eric, I'm still here. So the process has been for us up to now is that we started with the largest parks, and then from there we've asked the Jersey City Parks Coalition for feedback, and they've kind of guided the process on it. So if they had a list of parks, they would go to the respective community associations in that area, ask for feedback, and then we would just enact what they asked for. So there are some parks that could be open that aren't open as a result of that, and we're open to whatever feedback you have on when you want it open. We didn't want to make a unilateral decision and just open a pocket park without you guys agreeing to it. So it's probably a conversation your board wants to have, and then you would let us know if you're comfortable with it, and then we would just proceed with opening and doing the same things that we've done prior. It probably takes about 4 or 5 days for us to get ready to open it. Just cleaning, cutting grass, preparing, sanitizing, and then we'd work with you on the first couple of days.
Got it. Well, good news is we've got the cutting grass and the cleaning up part covered. Yeah, I mean, the other thing was, I know that the city has to staff these parks, right? Like, look at Enos Jones, which is great. That's reopened. The bike paths are open. As of last week, the skate park in there has opened, but there's an 8-foot table and 1 or 2, volunteers that are there offering masks to people. So, yeah, I think it's a good point you make. We'll have that conversation internally and decide, when we're comfortable with doing that. So the last piece before we get to Chuck, thank you for being so patient, Chuck, is I wanted to show you the pedestrian plaza draft design. Now I will highlight draft. Brian Platt from the city sent this to us as a peekaboo. It's pretty cool. It's pretty sexy. I'm going to say a couple of things about it and then just show you the virtual fly through. This is the high level plan for, what we can expect. And, essentially what you're seeing here is all of the red squares are these massive planters. Now the issue here is there's not enough space and they're unable to plant additional trees. So this is a rather clever solution to be able to plant full-size trees within a really big planter that incorporates seating along the outside. And you'll see that in some of the details next. The little green circles are replacement trees. Pink is movable seating. And then one of the questions that I wanted to sort of get to, or one of the things I wanted to get to was, there's a series of bollards here, and it's interesting that there is clearly some thought being given as to emergency vehicles, deliveries, that sort of thing. So if you can see this, I'll zoom in a little further. There are a few of those bollards that have a little X on them, and those are removable, whereas the others are fixed and static to allow that kind of access. So that all said, I'll go to the next slide, which is an image of some of the furniture that's being considered. It has a very kind of modern but sort of clean aesthetic. These kind of wrought iron benches, the planters. You'll see these here are those big guys with the seating around. the virtual fly-through. I'm not going to play the whole thing. Again, I want to give Chuck's team time. Sorry, we've run over a little bit, but I want to show this to you because it's interesting. And before I click play on this, I do want to just say there is an error in the way this is modeled, and I assume, given that I've made many a design presentation myself as an architect, these things happen, but it's modeled incorrectly. So you will see what appears to be a curb. One of the big tenets of this design is that it is level, right? So the sidewalk level will be the same level as the street. So the curb will not be there. It is here in this model. I confirmed that with Brian. That is simply an error. There are some fun things that I'll just tell you can look at while we fly down the street for 15 seconds or so. Clearly there was an issue with the 3D modeling because the entourage, which is all the people, some of them are sitting right on the street and some of them are floating up, that 4.5 inches that are the curb level. So this must have gone back and forth in their modeling process. Also, please try not to be distracted by the fact that there are about 12 different people that appear multiple times throughout this fly-through. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. 1 second. I made a mistake here. Shh. There we go. Now you can hear the sound. So these are those big planters that are going to allow for full-size shade trees to be planted within, and then these are the replacements on the left that go in the tree pits. And then we're coming up here on another big feature of the design, which is a type of permanent stage at this little plaza corner with the flags. See the floating people there on the left? The other piece of this is, because the road level the plaza level will be raised to the level of the sidewalk, what you're seeing with these cars is a little different than what will actually happen. They will go gradually up that bump and then back down right here at this crosswalk at Barrow, so that all of this, the entirety of the plaza itself, can be at the same level.
Eric, did Brian tell you when it's going out to bid and any of the details on that? If not, I can help you with that.
No, please do.
Yeah, so it's going out to bid this month, and we've been working with the SID in order to not make sure that the timing of the construction doesn't start till after the summer months. So we're probably looking at construction starting in September, October, more likely October-ish. It'll work through the cold weather, and then it'll be ready to be reopened in the spring next year. And it's about a $3.5 million project. And there's a lot of things to that that's not even in that schematic that you see. There's going to be some fixed lighting in the ground for better aesthetics.
Oh, nice.
The cafe lighting on top is going to have the ability to turn different colors depending on the year. Depending on the month. So, for example, if you wanted to do Pride Month, you can make it rainbow. If you wanted to do something for Valentine's Day, you can make it red, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot more planters, as you kind of touched on. The planters are there because there's a lot of utilities underneath there. It's very, very dense under Newark Avenue, so we had a really hard time in doing this. The street surface is going to be what you see there, those blocks, it's going to look great. They had some samples of that, which if somebody wants to see, he could probably get you some samples to show the group.
Yeah, it'd be great.
But yeah, it's a substantial investment, and I think that it's going to change permanently the feeling on Newark Avenue to being more of kind of what you see in some great cities around the world with regards to pedestrian walkways. And
the perfect scenario from my standpoint would be that if we like some of the components that we're about to experiment on over the next couple months with regards to maybe Grove Street being one way in certain parts, or Matthews up to Matthews maybe being that one way, we can incorporate that into kind of what we're trying to do here as well to really just expand the walkability of the area. So that's it.
Excellent. Thank you. Sorry, saying goodnight to the kids. Okay. That's really great. So I'll follow up with you on that, Steve. I think that would be really beneficial because there are some additional questions here. But at this time, I do want to turn it over to Chuck. Chuck, I presume that you want to take the screen share, or let me know if you want me to do that.
Unmuted now?
Yeah, there you go. You're unmuted now. Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, Jeff Lewis is the architect, so he's going to.
Oh, I see him there. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
So I'll give just a brief introduction and overview. So, and then I'm going to hand it off to Jeff. But thank you everyone for having this meeting, inviting us. I think it's great that this is a forum that we can use in these times. But what we have tonight is most of you are familiar with it. It's been a project and property that's been around for some time with what's the future development. We were before you probably a little over a year ago, and we got some comments and concerns. And I can tell you in that time frame, it's been a while, but we've been working on different iterations as to what might work here, and considering all the comments from the community and from planning. So this is in the R5 zone, and so it is a new, relatively new zone, but I think it's somewhat of a unique property here. What we've done here is as we presented at the last meeting, you could have individual lots and townhomes that do not require any parking. The total units altogether that would be permitted, whether it's not subdivided, but individual lots or created or developed as one entire lot, which we're proposing now, would be 17 units as well. So it's either way. But if you built it as we're proposing now, you actually then would be required to have parking. So what we heard at the last meeting, and what we heard from planning's comments too, is that because the school is right there, they weren't crazy about having a curb cut there with the children going up and down 4th Street. And my client would quite honestly would prefer parking because his plan is to have condominiums here. But that was, we thought, consideration that it makes sense, right? So we reduced the building too. At the last iteration was, I believe, 5 stories. So we reduced it so it's compliant with all the bulk standards. So it's now off of the school as well as having the compliant setback in the rear yard. The 2 variances that we are asking for are with regard to the parking, so that we don't have any. And then the density, we are asking for 20 units as opposed to the permitted 17. Part of that reason, from a planning perspective, is that we believe that the site can accommodate the 20 units. If you look at the floor plans, you have some very sizable units here within this building that's compliant with all the bulk. So that's kind of where that's coming from. I understand the V&A's position with regard to R5 that you don't. You're not crazy about any variances, but let alone support any. But we really think that this is appropriate because you do have some good size units here within the permitted bulk. So that's that's in a nutshell that we wanted to come back. We hopefully we addressed most, if not all, the concerns. And we did actually another thing. We did. Eric reached out to us last week, and appreciate that. Where the deck, the rooftop deck, we heard some comments that concerns about the size of the deck, and we had resubmitted plans to Eric. I thought that it had been reduced substantially. That, in looking at it again, quite honestly, it appeared that that was not the case. There were some, you know, when I looked at it, I was looking from different points, and bottom line, it wasn't that's much smaller. So we went back and we have reduced it to 1,250 feet. I think it was at the permitted maximum initially was like 1875 or something in that neighborhood. So we reduced it, you know, close to 600 feet in response to the comments we received from the VNA. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Jeff, so he can walk you through the project.
Yeah, sorry, if I could just real quick, Jeff, I just want everyone else to be aware of those of you that might be new to this or to this particular site and this particular proposal. This actually even predates me on the VNA. We've seen this for 5+ years. There have been a number of you know, concessions made and comments that the VNA has made. Again, well prior to the most recent comments about the size of the roof deck. You know, there were comments about the setbacks to the school. And so we just to be perfectly transparent with everyone that you're aware that this is by no means first time we're seeing it. This is the culmination of years of work with this particular proposal. So thank you. Sorry, Jeff, please take it away.
Yep. Great. Thank you. And I actually did some drawings on this project in 2013. So I understand how long it's been around and how long it's changed. Let me just share my screen here. Okay, so I want to start with starting on sheet T100 down in the lower right corner of my drawing. I just want to orient everyone to where we are. So you can see we have Route 78 going north-south. Here's Columbus Drive, and then Newark Ave coming on an angle across. And you can see I just passed our site. This is 4th Street. It's a one-way street going west. And we are on the one block that is west of Newark Avenue. It's a small block. Looking to the tax map, you can see here is 4th Street. And this is the shaded in area is our site. On our block to the left of us is that school. It's a 4-story school. To the right of us, we have three-story building, 2-story building, 3-story building, 2-story building, I believe. And then across the street, there are a few 4-story buildings and then a few 1-story buildings. And most of these buildings are actually fronting on Newark Avenue, and we're kind of looking in at their back. As was mentioned, we're proposing a 4-story residential building, and we are asking for 2 variances. The first, again, was for density, and the second was for parking. And I wanted to just add a little to the parking. It's true that school safety is definitely the main reason that this was done, why it was suggested that it was done, and why the client eventually decided to do that. But I would argue that from a planning perspective, there are many reasons to not have parking here. Generally, when you look to a space that you're going to build without parking, I mean, having a downtown location is a huge plus. Having an area that has walkability is a really huge plus. And if you go online, the walk score for this area is actually 94, which is very high. There's lots of stores, there's lots of retail. We just had a presentation about, you know, a 3-block pedestrian plaza that's walking distance from this site. So it is a walkable neighborhood. Access to mass transportation, the PATH train is less than 15-minute walk away. And there are buses down Newark Avenue. And then access to bike lanes, where we don't have a bike lane actually in front of our property, but across the street on Newark Ave, there are bike lanes going down, I believe, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and then also bike lanes going north-south off of those. So it's pretty, it's a pretty well-connected site. So it actually is a site that I think makes sense to not have parking. And I just want to go now to the site plan very briefly. You can see the shaded area in brownish is our building. We have a small window well to the left, and that's there actually to address 2 windows that are on the existing building that's on our left side. So we're making sure that we provide them with the light and air that they're required to have. We have a 30-foot rear yard setback. Most of that setback is a planted lawn area. A small amount of it is also a paved area. And this paved area wraps around the side of the building that we share with the school. And as was mentioned, there's a minimum setback from the school. We are 10 foot at the very closest to the school in the front. There's a main entrance and a secondary entrance to the left of the building. You can see we are proposing new concrete curb, new concrete sidewalk, and 3 new street trees. And okay, I'm going to skip through a few sheets now because we have a bunch of detail sheets that we don't need. and walk to the floor plans. So this is the ground floor plan. You can see to the right, we have the main lobby, and it's a fairly large lobby. We have an elevator, 2 stairs in the building with a central corridor connecting them. And then there are 3 units on the back of the building and 2 on the front on this floor. And I'm going to start with the 3 in the back because these 3 units are actually the same on every floor in the entire building. They are all about 720 square foot, 1 bedroom, 1 bath apartments. We have stackable washer dryer in every unit. We have central air conditioning in every unit. The units are ADA accessible. All of these master bedrooms have one size or another of walk-in closet. The floor plan itself is an open plan with an open kitchen with a counter with seating. All of that is pretty much consistent throughout the entire building. The 2 front apartments on this floor are a little small. There's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment to the left here, and that apartment is 1,193 square feet. And then there's an apartment to the right, which is a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, and that apartment is actually larger than the ones in the back, and that is 830 square feet. Then also, before I go upstairs, I just show briefly to the right here, you can see there's a small cellar underneath the lounge area, underneath the lobby area, excuse me. The elevator and 1 stair go to this cellar, and in this cellar we have our trash room, our bicycle storage room, and meter rooms. Now, 2nd through 4th floor, again, all of these upper floors are the same, and as I mentioned before, these 3 units in the back are the same. They are still 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 720 square foot units. Then the 2 units in the front here are both very large 2-bedroom, 2-bath units. The one to the left here is 1,310 square feet. The one to the right is 1,394 square feet. They have really large living areas. The master bedroom is huge with a really large walk-in closet as well. So again, very large units for all of these 2 bedrooms on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor. Then switching to the roof plan. Sorry about that. So here's the roof. You can see both stairs and the elevator come to the roof, and they're set back, obviously. And we have a small area for the elevator lobby, and then entry to the central roof deck from both sides. As was mentioned, actually the deck is 1,272 square feet, so a tiny bit over
It's
the 1,250.
yeah, that was changed.
Oh, 1,272 is never written on the drawings. I'm sorry. But I guess if it's gonna be 1,250, it'll be 1,250. I'm sorry, Chuck. And again, as was mentioned, 30% is the maximum allowed, and that would be 1,842 square feet. So this is set back from the front and the back of the building. It's set back about 14 feet from the front and more than that from the back, depending on what side you're on the building. It's 20 to 28 feet set back from the back of the building. Along the back line of the roof deck area, we have a 42-inch high fence, and I'll show you the detail for that on the next sheet. And then along the front, we have a buffer of a 24-inch high planter, and that surrounds the whole area in the front. Then we have a few just utility areas where you can see all the condensers are here. This would just be general roofing area. And then green planting trays, which actually ends up equaling 1,838 square feet. So 1,838 square feet of green planters and 1,250 square feet of roof deck area. And then you could see at the top in the center here, there's a detail of the planter box. And then the fence actually is going to be built the same as the planter box with the metal posts and wood slats, except it would be 42 inches high instead of just the 24 inches high of the planter box. This is the elevation. So looking at the front elevation, you could see here down at the first floor, we're using cast stone as our main finish material. At the base, this is a 48-inch high cast stone block, and these are a gray color. And then the rest of the bulk is 24 inches high. Then the main mass of the building is, I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit, make it a little. A little better. Sorry about this, guys. So again, we have a brick for the main mass of the building up top. This is going to be a red-gray colored brick and with a smooth finish. We have soldier courses at every window line. We have recessed decorative bands every 8 courses. And then you can see at the top, we have a pretty substantial cornice. It's 48 inches high, and it's a black metal wrapped cornice. It continues across the entire building, including the section above the lobby, which is a more modern section. And you can see the windows up above are actually the same size. There's just more window, they're closer together, taking up a little more space. And then you can see at the bottom, our lobby has floor to ceiling curtain wall windows. And then besides having a little more glass in this section, you can see we have a more modern finish at the top. This is a metal panel finish above. And then also we have a little push and pull going on here. So the lobby is actually set back about 3 feet. And then this upper section is cantilevered forward about 1 foot, which gives us a little depth, but also gives us a nice overhang for everyone entering and exiting the building. And then you can see also in the background, this is the stair and elevator tower on both sides. You can see they're pretty far set back. The building itself is roughly the same height, actually a little smaller than the actual school to our right. And going to the side elevations, this is the right side elevation. I just want to show you, you can see the slight overhang here. But then you can also see we're wrapping the front finishes of the building around. And this is going back all the way to the stair tower, which is about 20-something feet back. So we're wrapping it around substantially. And then from the stair tower back, this is gray hardy plank lap siding. On the other side elevation, anywhere that's not up against the building adjacent to us will also be that same hardy plank lap siding. And then again, on the rear, same hardy plank lap siding, and then all the windows are black finish on the exterior. That's our building. Chuck, anything else, or do we want to take some questions? I mean, I'd like to leave time for questions. It's more
Eric, I
important.
guess if you want to open it up to questions.
Yeah, there were a couple of questions that have
Sure.
come in for clarification on the choice for no parking with this project. If we could just explain the reasoning behind that.
Okay, so yeah, a couple of reasons. Like I said earlier, we did get some comments, concerns about having a curb cut there, and parking in and out with the school nearby and the kids, going up and down the street there. So that wasn't preferable. I know planning did not prefer that. And we, if you built this in four separate townhomes, if you will, then no parking would be required. So essentially, you could have the same, the same setup, same amount of units. Understanding we're asking for the variance for the 3 additional units, but you could still have 17 units here and no parking whatsoever. So you're still looking at kind of the same kind of development, but it's obviously we think it's a better development to have it one building. And as Jeff mentioned, we believe that it's a walkable neighborhood here. So we just think overall the benefits of not having the curb cut and not having the parking here is a better alternative. And it's kind of, the irony is you could actually have a development with the same bulk and separate townhouses and no parking would be required.
Yeah, do you realistically think that the residents that would purchase a unit in this building wouldn't have a car?
I wouldn't say that every resident is not going to have a car, no. But if that's very important to them, they're not going to move here.
Well, I'm just saying, you've seen 4th Street, and I don't know if you've seen downtown, but every building that has been built without parking has caused spillover into other areas, which are already very hard to park to begin with. I mean, I was once a 2-car family because many times my wife and I would go in different directions. We're down to a 1-car family because it's just become too challenging to park, 2 vehicles in Jersey City. It's like insane.
Right.
But I mean, you're talking about at least 20 vehicles. I mean, that's if everybody has it. So let's say 50%. That's 10 new vehicles on 4th Street. That's a lot of vehicles.
It's a really, really difficult area to park now. If you have to move your car because of street cleaning or whatever, you're looking at an hour minimum of driving around to find a spot. And I know you all think that people living here are not going to have cars, but people in Jersey City have vehicles.
Understood. Like I said earlier, my client's preference was to have parking, but he was reacting to what he believed was more of a concern about the school and the children walking up and down the street. That if you have that curb cut, you can have cars going in and out.
But if you had regular like brownstone style buildings, then
you're not required to have parking. So you could have the same unit count there, same setup, but then you would not be required to have the parking under the R5.
Right. As individual 25 by 100 lots, this is 4 lots being combined. You would not be required to have it, but once you get to this width, you are required to have it. So it sounds to me like this is a conversation for planning, because Domenica and Kristen and others, this development team had parking in their original proposal, and planning was not wanting to have a curb cut that close to the school, which is really where that came from.
I understand, because my kids are hopefully going to be going to the school next year. So I understand that part too. I'm just concerned about how many buildings are going up in the neighborhood and how limited the parking already is.
Sure.
Even the curb
If I could jump in, can I jump in for 1 second? Because I don't think planning's only, I don't want to speak for planning, but their only problem, I don't think, with parking here is that it's right next to the school. Generally, planning does not want you to build parking when you're so close to mass transit, when you're in such a walkable neighborhood. I know people have cars, and people always assume everyone that's going to move in is going to have a car, but if you build parking, then they're definitely going to have cars. So the new buildings that we build in our the new buildings that we try to build in our downtowns that we want to be walkable, if we build them with parking, we're never going to change car culture. We have to build them without parking, or nothing's ever going to change.
Do you live here, Jeff?
I live in downtown Newark, so no.
You have parking?
All right. Sorry, this question came through on the chat. Peter Farrell, do you have a question you'd like to ask?
Hey, Chuck. It's Peter Farrell. Obviously, I've been on the V&A board for many years, going back to the original proposal, which I think goes back to 2014 or so.
Right.
Jeff, are you still working with Manny, the architect, or have you taken the project over?
I'm working with Manny.
All right, so Manny's still on the project also?
Yep.
All right,
Yes,
I got a couple of questions. And as you know, I abut this property right behind what you have set at lot 1. So I think I'm lot 21 on your map. But I got a couple of questions. One is, through this process, and just so everybody knows who's on this, we originally, this was presented to zoning years ago, and the V&A went down, and I presented arguments on behalf of the V&A, and we stopped the project that they were seeking variances at the time when there was a R1, which used to allow 3 stories, and they were trying to get 5 stories. And then they've come back with different reiterations of the project, and this is its current state. But one of the things we were concerned about was giving the garden on the school some light and air. And I just wanted to, I'm not trying to look at your drawing to the property line, not to the school itself, but what's the narrowest amount of feet between your side wall and the property line? So what's the narrowest amount of space that you've put in there?
Sure. Let me come up.
You mean on the school side, right, Peter? It's obviously
On the school
it's
side.
zero on the other side.
Right, 0 on the other side.
Yeah, I'm going to zoom in and I'll give you exactly. The narrowest is going to be all the way at the back of the building. You can see it's 3 foot 8.5 inches all the way here at the back. That's the narrowest for
All right,
our
so
property line.
3'8" at the back, and then what's the widest as you go forward?
And at the front, we get to 7'2" on our property line at the front.
And why is that the disparity? Is that the way the property line runs?
Yeah, we're not. Well, what it looks like he did is we ran obviously, we wanted to go straight across the front property line and then straight back, and he took that point where he had 10 feet minimum from the school and used that as his line and just followed that the entire length, front to back.
Yeah, you'll see that the property line there gets wider as you get towards the front of
Yeah,
it.
right. And it also actually worked perfectly because for a multifamily building, you need 44 inches for a walkway here, so this is pretty perfect.
All right, and so that's listed as a concrete sidewalk. So what's the decision on having that concrete sidewalk there and running around to the back? Is there some purpose to that, or that's just?
It's so building tenants could actually use the yard area. That's access for building tenants.
All right, and access to that area.
And there's a gate. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was wondering, access is obviously from the street there, but from the building, there's that one side door. Is that the only access to that area?
That's right. From the side door, you can see here. That's access from the lobby, and then here, there's a gate at the front as well.
All right, and then in the back, what do you mean when you say reinforced yard area? What does that actually entail?
I actually don't know the answer to that. From what I understand, it's really just the lawn.
All right, so there's no special. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything unique to you or this drawing.
No, I don't believe so. I'm sorry. I don't have the answer to that. I didn't see that. Usually, I would be surprised if this was anything but a normal planted lawn area.
All right, and can you tell me? This is obviously. It appears that there's going to be some excavation, right, to put the foundation in. And on these drawings, or can you just explain if you're the person, what happens to the dirt? We're all concerned about the soil and the contaminants in the soil. And it's obviously next to the schoolyard and next to private homes. What's going to be done to keep that? I'm sure there's a lot of contaminants, lead, and other things in that soil. Can you just describe that for us?
Sure. Well, I would say actually, because of the design of the building and getting rid of the parking and everything, all of the residential units are actually like 3 or 4 feet up from grade. So we're going up. So there's actually not going to be a lot of excavation. Obviously we're going to be excavating for the foundations around everything, but then we're going to also be filling in the building. So it's going to be pretty close to zero. I don't know how much soil is actually going to be leaving this site, but it's not going to be a ton. Obviously, whatever does have to leave has to be tested in accordance to the law. But again, because we don't have much of a basement and because our first floor is actually going to be built up, there's not going to be as much excavation as you would usually see, or as much soil leaving the site as you would usually see on a property like this.
And can you
answer your question?
Well, I mean, what steps are, when you start the excavation, what steps are going to be taken so the soil doesn't start blowing around all over the school garden?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, sure, of course. There are construction standards we have to follow. There's a silt fence around the entire property, and that's sandbagged around. Everything has to be watered. There's a whole sheet of details that I believe we have that I skipped over, of just everything that's required by law, by code for us to do to make sure that that dirt doesn't leave the site. Another thing we could probably agree to do, usually you have to wash the street also. You do, so maybe we could agree to do that more if it seems that it's being a problem. But generally, with the wheel cleaning bed and cleaning the site every day, cleaning the street every day, we can keep a site like this pretty clean.
Right. So it discusses some type of fencing that's put up to keep the dirt. I'm just wondering on the school side and around the exterior of the property. Are you doing only what is required by code when you build it, and what are you prepared to either make it a little higher, a little taller, to really keep the contaminants contained?
Well, yeah, we're required to take care of everything. We have to keep everything on our site that's on our site. So the silt fence is basically, usually what you'll have is you'll have a regular fence, and then the silt fence you see it's kind of usually like 2 to 3 feet high. and it's staked into the ground, and it stops all the dirt from leaving your site. The other things, I'm not sure what we're proposing. We can obviously make fence higher if it's something you prefer, but I think 3 feet is the standard. I'm not exactly sure on that. It might be 30 inches. But there's a whole sheet of environmental control and sediment control notes on everything that we have to do. And maybe I can just go to that sheet. It should be in here. And there's a lot of so we can see here some dewatering, vegetation maintenance, which is not actually helpful. Here we go. This is the stockpile notes, the filter fence. Here's our wheel cleaning area. Again, so this is the detail. You can see the fence actually comes out all the way around the site and out in front of the site. And this is the filter fence detail. I don't know if you can see it. This is the fence that I'm talking about. I can zoom in a little bit. So it's minimum of 2 feet tall, and it's a mesh fence that generally catches all the, keeps us all on the site. Any stockpiles we're required to water, and generally hay to keep everything where it is. Again, the laws here are pretty good, and we follow them obviously 100%. But if anything seems to be not working, then we'll do more. But generally, things work pretty well.
So can I just jump in here, please? Chuck, I want to make a statement here, and I want everyone to hear it, because this is what we've all been talking about. And I appreciate what Jeff has documented in his contract drawings, and it is what the code is requiring. But, as a community, I can tell you, we've had a bad experience recently with another project that was built, during construction, right? So we need to work together on this one. We're going to be looking for a much more rigorous communicative process during construction, right? And I'm just saying this. I think it's doable, but I think it needs to happen, right? Look, I get it. Like I'm sitting in school right now, right? But maybe the world reopens and that actually is a school again, right?
Right.
But my point being very simply that things like Peter's mentioning, relative to excavation and environmental concerns, the codes are generally the bare minimum, and we would be looking for a responsible development, which takes into account the fact that everybody's at home right now. We're right next to the school. I know that as an architect myself, I cannot dictate how a foundation pile gets driven into the ground. I can just dictate how many there need to be based on the structural loads, working with a structural engineer, right? And it's up to the owner, right, your client, Chuck, to decide the means and methods, right? That's not for an architect to say. Like, we can't say you absolutely 100%, must use screw piles or helical piles. But I'm telling you, as a community, we are passionate about this. Kids went home from school with headaches because of the piles that were driven at 202 Marcellus with a diesel pile driver. So, especially now that everybody's home, but I'm assuming you got to drive them down to about 80 feet on that site because the soil sucks back there, but, and that
can I address
yes,
that? Because I kind of think you're wrong on that one, because it's actually one of the beauties of this building not having parking is it's a really light building.
So the loads have reduced significantly without the, got it. That's interesting to know.
The loads are reduced, and actually the loads not only are reduced, but they're spread out more, because when you're parking, you need these big open spaces. So every column just puts that much more right on these spots. And that's why you then generally need all these piles. I don't think this building is going to need piles. I would be very surprised if it does. This is going to be built with regular continuous footings, probably a little larger than for a regular house. Maybe they'll be 30 to 42 inches instead of the typical 24. But I don't foresee using piles for this building personally.
We would obviously love that. That makes me jubilant just to hear it.
Who wouldn't? I know, I agree.
I hadn't considered that the loads changed significantly. So you're currently planning for like no, you don't even have a basement level, but I'm assuming there's CMU and then wood frame on top. something like that? And you're talking about
it would be 4 stories of wood frame, and we would either have a crawl space with CMU walls with continuous footings, or just a slab on grade with I forget what I mean.
We would love to see that happen, because this has been something that, we're passionate about, and kind of prepared to go to the mat on, so to speak, to protect our children and the community at large.
Piles are expensive too, and piles are expensive. We don't want to do them either.
They are expensive, and we recognize that there's usually like a 30% premium to go to a screw or a helical as opposed to a driven pile, so on and so forth, right? But that's a big one for us. I'll even go so far as to say, go ahead, Jeff.
I'm just saying it is a hidden benefit of not having the parking, is that that's something, if I had parking here, you would need piles, because you're going to have all those point loads.
So if that comes back, then we have to have that conversation about, how piles are being driven. And I will also say, what I meant about a communicative process is, Chuck and I'd be looking for your assistance on this, please, to liaise with your client. But, Robinson, one of our board members, they had the site built right next door to them, and they had the foreman's phone number, and there was a communicative process when codes were not being strictly followed, or people were acting badly. It took a phone call and things were corrected immediately. I feel like for the sake of the parents and the kids, that we would love to see something like that happen at this property.
And I would expect that my client would do that, and we could have a constant contact and communication. And for good, bad, or worse, it's you have my number. So during this process, I always tell
Yes, I do.
if they can't get in touch with me, they can reach out to me. Because my client too, he's a builder. He's been building in Jersey City for 30 years. So he's a responsible builder. He knows how to do it. And these issues, they're not foreign to him, and they're real issues, especially all the people that live right next door. So I would expect that we would be addressing them during construction as well.
So, Chuck, can you confirm with the developer whether it in fact is going to require piling or not? Because our experience has been any building in this area requires piling, and if you could get us a sense of if you get us an answer, the yes or no, that might alleviate the concerns. Right. If it is going to require piling, if you can tell us how many piles you expect are needed, and whether Alan would be willing to use either helical or screw piles for that number of piles, that would go a long way to alleviate the concerns, because as Eric has said, the building that just went across from the school with the piling was a complete nightmare for the kids and the school and the instruction for the weeks and weeks that it went on for. Is that something you could get us answers on? Yeah,
I can reach out to them and find out. I don't know those answers, but we can absolutely find out what the plan is and what's going to be necessary.
So
all right, I just asked that you do that before it comes up for the variance hearing in front of the zoning board, so we can finalize our position.
Right.
Right. So this project is slated to appear before the June 18th ZBA, the Zoning Board of Appeals. They are on the agenda for that date. So everybody, please be prepared. If you have interest in this property, to join in that, and Chuck, we would look to get some answers as quickly as you can. You understand our position on these two primary issues. I do thank you for the reduction of the roof deck. I know we're running long here. I have to ask simply because it has come up. I know I threw that 1250 number at you. And I guess I was a bad poker player. I should have gone lower. But I'm going to say, that 1250 number, I'm just thinking about this as an amenity. I know we had Tamir and certainly Irene is on here, who are prominent, realtors in downtown Jersey City. But I'm wondering about, like, to what extent at what point does this become too small to be a real benefit as an amenity to, the bottom dollar in the sales of these units? Because at the moment at 1250, you can still occupy 83 people on that roof at a 15 square foot per person metric. So I'm just wondering, I think we would like to see if you would consider reducing that a little further, if that is going to be harmful to the design, then we should talk to you about that. But those are the discussions that my board and I were having. That, you know, you've gotten it down to a good spot. But again, you know, I feel like, you know, even at 1,000 square feet, you know, you're still getting 66 people on that roof simultaneously, which at 20 units is a good portion of the building. So that I wanted to pass along to you. And then of course the big one about the foundations and the construction methodology, which, you know, we would really like to be a part of just to help alleviate some of the community concerns.
Right. I mean, I'll discuss the deck further, but I mean, I don't think you're going to get 66 people up there at one time, even though that's the capacity. And I think we took, you know, a third of the permitted capacity of the size of the deck. So
yeah, no, understood. And so the point that Chuck is making is that the R5 allows, again, the R5 was really designed for 25 by 100 lots, right? So 30% maximum coverage on a roof in 25 by 100 lot isn't that big. But when your lot becomes, you know, 90 by 70, 30% is a sizable number. So the point he's making is that, you know, they're allowed to have 1,875, I believe it is, and they've dropped it down to 1,250. So look, you know, go ahead, Robinson, please.
Yeah, I mean, I know that roof decks are permitted in the R5, and I also know how that happened. When the planning board officially passed the R5, roof decks were not allowed, and that got snuck in before the city council did it. So after years of cooperation and compromise, we ended up with slipping roof decks in at the last minute. And even if roof decks are permitted, for most R5, it is a 4-story, 4-family. And that is very different from a 20-family building. We're very concerned about a party deck, and we're more concerned about a deck that is 4 stories off the ground. Like, we're not sure how far that noise will travel. If you have 20 people there just talking, you know, we'll be able to hear it at night. I live right across from it. 4th floor, it'll go straight into my master bedroom, every party that they have on that roof deck. And you know, that's why we originally objected to the idea of having roof decks in the R5, and that's why they were taken out, they were not allowed, and the planning board did pass that with no roof decks allowed. But unfortunately it got snuck in, so now they're allowed. So I really think that, you know, this is the first real test of a 4-story building with 20 families having a roof deck in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And I just don't know what the effect of the noise will be. And I understand it's an amenity that will make money for the developer, but I'm not sure that it will benefit the neighborhood. And I know planning, you know, likes roof decks because there's not enough green space around in the city, but this is not an area that suffers from green space. It's literally right next door to a park. So my preference would be that there be no roof deck at all.
Okay. I hear you.
Barrier or trees or plants or something that would block the sound.
That would help. That would help.
At least on the north and south sides, where it's exposed to other buildings as opposed to being on the roof of the building next door.
Yeah, I do think the ring of planters, which you've now made continuous on the 3 sides that face north, if they could support planting that, you know, were taller, that could provide some sound mitigation, but at the moment they're relatively low.
Yeah, and certainly the side facing 4th Street, there's no view. There's the only view of our building. You know, there's not a view of Lower Manhattan or anything really. So I think having trees would help if you're going to have a roof deck, and I wish you wouldn't. You know, I mean, I know that when I was living in Greenwich Village, it was a real issue because there were no roof decks in the 70s and 80s due to security, because people were concerned that, you know, thieves and miscreants would hop between roofs. So there weren't any roof decks. But then when things got a little, you know, there was less crime in the 21st century, there started to be roof decks. And because everything was pretty much on the same level, you got real noise, and real noise being an issue that we can't control. I mean, a city park, you can say that it's closed at a certain hour and the police can patrol it. But we can't control what's going on with these 20 people. And I mean, Chuck, you said, well, you may never get 80 people on that deck, but you don't know who's moving in. You don't know any of the people who are going to live there and what they may end up doing and what their party policy may be for their roof.
So I think one thing we can definitely look into is like taller landscaping there, maybe some trees to, between now and the hearing, take a look at that, because it is, I understand what you're saying, and it may work as a buffer there. I mean, I honestly had a note here earlier that maybe you do that to, so that it's, you're not looking at people immediately behind you either, that's the fence is 3 feet high, so maybe we can do something to get additional screening, and then the landscaping might work as a better noise buffer too.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only direction that really matters from a view standpoint is the east, looking at the city.
Oh.
And based on the renderings, it looks like you would be able to see up over the adjacent buildings to the east.
Okay.
So if that's true, and you could actually see Manhattan and see the big buildings or whatever, see the view from looking east from that rooftop, that would, I think that would be the side to leave not covered, but all the other sides with, large trees or shrubbery or something to block the sound so that the adjacent neighbors don't have a direct access to that, or don't have to listen direct to the sound.
Very good point.
Well,
All right,
I'll add to that. I'll just add to
sorry.
that. Obviously, you have property. I mean, again, you'll have to look at it, Chuck, and let us know. But I mean, to me, if you could circle it, you got homes behind it as well. So you got homes all behind you on the 3rd Street side. You have the school on one side. You have Robinson and the other homes across 4th Street, and you have right now is a vacant building when you're looking at that map to the left, but that'll also be developed. So. I would echo Robinson, roof deck is not something I'm in favor of. But in the alternative, if you're going to propose something, the more you can soundproof it in any ways that you can think of, obviously that would be better for us to be thinking about.
Hey, Chuck?
Yep.
What about a glass atrium?
That's atrium. No, well then it becomes.
Wait, no,
it becomes another
can't do
story.
that. That's a building code. That's the story. That would be a building code issue.
All right.
It'd be beautiful.
Good idea, though.
And then.
All right.
Doug, I got one last question. Do you know if the owner is going to be using these for sale or for rental? Has he made a decision?
He wants to do condos.
Yeah, you said condo, Chuck. Yep.
And if there's going to be any parties up there, just make sure we're all invited. That's the main thing.
Yeah, no, it's the opposite that we're looking for. Jim, did you want to say something?
Can I ask a quick question, Chuck?
Yeah.
If it is a condo, is it possible in the offering to just say you have a roof deck, but it's closed at 10 p.m.?
I mean, the quick answer, is it possible? Yes. I don't, that's something, I'd have to talk to my client about.
Because
something in the building.
A lot of problems. If it's 10 or 11 p.m., then, that even I expect people will not do it, but the fact that there's a rule there will mean that less people will do it. So if you put it in the offering, that would be great. And also, I do want to say about parking, I can tell those people who want parking that this is a unique block where we can barely get our car out on 4th Street. So as far as no parking, it's one of the few cases where I'd say, great, don't do it. Because we can't get out at all. When school's in session, we have to wait. So.
All right, everybody. We're running quite a bit over and I haven't eaten. So I want to say thank you to Chuck and Jeff and everybody on this call. We would like to continue the dialogue on this, obviously. So please send emails to myself or to the info@jcvillage.org account. And we will continue the conversation. We'll keep you updated. I thank everyone. I felt like this was pretty successful. It's pretty cool that we were Mayor Fulop's first virtual meeting. That's pretty cool for a little place like the Village. So thanks everyone. Really, totally appreciate it. Have a great evening. Be safe, be well, and look forward to shaking your hand at some point in the future, if and when that's ever acceptable.
Great job, Eric.
All right.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Mhm.